Welcome back. Time now for The Clash. Those of us who object to the discriminatory and wrong vaccine passports, not my words, by the way, but those of Vaccine Minister himself, Nadine Zahawi, when I spoke to him about this a few months ago, have already been warned they risk being denied the opportunity to have a pint in a pub, dance in a club or jet off on holiday. But now, unbelievably, the right to an education also risks being stripped away in what's been described as a Beijing-style move by horrified critics. That's after Downing Street signalled today that university students may have to present proof that they are double-jabbed before they are able to attend lectures or live in halls of residence. So to debate this tonight, Cam Hall, a student at the University of Warwick, who says no one should be forced to be vaccinated in order to receive an education. And Brooke Davies, who's studying politics at the University of York and is a former editor of campus newspaper York Vision, who is in favour of introducing vaccine passports for students. Great to have you both here. Cam, why are you opposed to this?
I think first and foremost, I think the most important thing to say first is that I think people should get vaccinated. I think we should obviously celebrate the vaccination programme. And obviously, if you look at the data at the moment, then it's very clear that vaccinations work. I think my concern predominantly is more the nature of through which this is being rolled out. And it's that idea very much, and I know a lot of people I've sort of spoken to about this, have kind of been very concerned, I think, about two things. I think firstly, the risk. I think that some may feel that the fact that some people may potentially feel left behind by the introduction of some form of mandatory vaccination. So I know some people, for example, have allergies, for example, and they said, well, they don't feel confident taking the jab, feeling that there could be a risk there. So from their perspective, they feel that there's potentially too much of a risk, and they don't necessarily feel like they want to take the vaccination. But I think secondly as well, it's really that sort of that relationship between the individual and the state with regards to sort of what the state can tell us or what the state should mandate we be able to do.
Of course. And Brooke Davies, I thought students were meant to fight for freedoms. Why are you so prepared to allow the government to mandate and coerce you into getting a vaccine?
Well, actually, I don't agree with having to be double jabbed before you start university for a lot of reasons. Mainly that many students aren't actually able to get double jabbed at the start of term. I just think that vaccination should be encouraged as much as possible, because I do agree with vaccinations, and I know a lot of people do. It more comes down to that, especially if the figures are true that not many young people are getting jabbed. But I do know plenty of university students who have gotten jabbed, have gotten their first jab. And I do think it's just important as to encourage that as much as possible, especially when you're a student.
By the time that you guys go back to university and by the time this vaccine passport plan will be rolled out, you all would have had the opportunity to get a second jab. So at that point, you do think it's okay?
I just think it should be heavily encouraged. I don't think it should be mandatory, no, because you do have your own freedoms of health, and I do agree with what a lot has been said. I just do think that, having been at university where a lot of things have been not allowed, I've just finished my final year now and I've missed out on so much, and it would be great just to be able to ensure that we can keep things in person, even lectures, they weren't the same online. And it would be great to, I don't even get a graduation ceremony until spring. So just ensuring that we can keep cases low for as long as possible is kind of what I want. And through vaccinations, I know that, that's certainly possible.
OK, so you think that vaccines are the best way to ensure that students get to experience all of those things that you've missed out on?
Yeah, well, it certainly looks like that. It shows that the vaccines are working, and that's absolutely great. And I just know I'm leaving university now, but certainly for that next intake, it would be great that they could continue to have what my first year was like pre-COVID. So yeah, that's where I stand.
Cam, Why do you think some students are reluctant to be vaccinated? Is it because of the potential risk, or is it because students just don't like being told what to do?
Well, I think in general, students are very enthusiastic about getting vaccinated. I can't think of anyone that I know who doesn't want to be vaccinated. I think perhaps one reason a lot of students haven't come forward recently is I know that there's the 4 week wait between booking your COVID jab from once you've had coronavirus. And of course, with a lot of the cases amongst younger people at the moment, and with the Delta variant being amongst that, I think that has probably contributed towards it. I think where there is hesitancy, I think some of that is potentially that whole idea of being told what to do. I think some of it potentially is derived, I think, from students potentially feeling that they are lower risk, that they are of an age where they are of a lower risk from COVID. And so individually to them, they don't necessarily feel like they have to go and get the jab. But certainly from all of the data that people have been seeing, and I agree with exactly what Brooke is saying in terms of vaccination is the best way out of the pandemic, that we should really be encouraging people to get vaccinations. But I think there's a concern in terms of the sort of individual freedoms and civil liberties in terms of whether we can mandate that. And I think
Well, yes,
that
absolutely.
is something that is potentially
Absolutely, because Brooke Davies, what worries me is that if students who are opposed to vaccination are told that the only way they can go to university is by being vaccinated, I worry that actually it will make them rebel even more. What would you do, Brooke, if one of your friends approached you and said that they were concerned about getting the vaccine at this early stage because there wasn't a strong risk of them dying from COVID and they were concerned about the side effects, for example, that they may have read about? What would be your advice to your friend in that scenario?
I mean, well, to be honest, like my advice would be just to get the vaccine. But obviously, like everyone is different, and obviously everyone's health is different. So I think it does come down to that. And obviously, in the case that universities are actually requiring proof that you've been double jabbed, I guess it, like looking at that scenario as well. It comes down to the university and the person. I would probably say, get the vaccine if you can, especially if it's just down to kind of, bit of like general fear about just getting the vaccine rather than genuine health concerns. But I would say if it is down to more of a point of freedom of choice and they do not want to get it, they still do have the right to go to university.
Cam, the issue is that this plan that the government is proposing, or is at least discussing, and it seems to have the backing of Boris Johnson, who used to be a libertarian, by the way. I mean, don't know what's happened to him over the past 2 years. But it's not going to be a choice for the universities to introduce. It's going to be something that's mandated by government. And surely that's just a massive issue, isn't it? It feels like young people have already had to give up so much and now basically being told if you want to get back to normal life, if you want to go to university, if you want to go to a nightclub, you're going to have to give in to an enforced government vaccine.
Well, something I was actually thinking about before I came on there was the idea of actually, is it kind of acceptable if the university can set the limits? And I would say if the university was to turn around and say, well, look, we want you to be double jabbed, to come to our university, to live in our halls, to stay on campus, I actually think that would be seen as acceptable in the sense that the relationship of us as students with the university, where we pay the university £9,000 a year for our tuition fees, we buy into their education. And so we, in a sense, we sign that contract. And so it's very much worth us. If the universities say that this is what we want, then we can make that choice when we look at different universities. And if they have different rules, particularly I think for anyone considering going to university next year, that they can look at the rules that universities are making and sort of make their decisions based on that, based on how we make our decisions of choosing to go to university anyway, sort of assessing the different options. Whereas between the sort of the individual and the state, there's this very fluid social contract, the boundaries of which aren't always as drawn as that relationship between the student and the university. And I think that lack of clarity is, I think, the thing that's potentially concerning when we go on to the wider aspect of civil liberties and individual freedom.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows, and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.